Thank you, everybody. Todd, good to see you.
Hi, John.
Okay, we're going to go in the past briefly, and then we're going to take you ahead to what's going to be happening in the National Football League, because it is a very exciting time. Technology, IT, you name it's a big part of it. But before we get started, Todd, I want to take you back when you came here to Seattle, and you built the 12s. You built the brand that made the Seahawks the team that it is and the franchise it is right now. What did you do in doing that?
Well, I don't agree with that, so it's not the first time I've disagreed with you, John.
That's okay.
Chuck Arnold's back here, Amy Spranger's, and the fact is that that all lived here. It all resided here just as those beautiful mountains did, but we focused on it and acknowledged it, and it has definitely come back roaring to life, and this is now the loudest stadium in all of sports. And it's a phenomenal home for the Seahawks, but it's a great home for the Sounders. And I think Seattle's arguably the best sports market in all of the country and maybe the sports capital of the world in that context.
I know there's a big Leiweke touch in a lot of things that's still going on here, too.
He's speaking later, okay? So if you have questions for him on those issues, talk to him directly.
But you brought out the fans and got them to do it. What were some of the biggest things that you looked back on and were able to do to get the fans so involved, so loud, and so proud?
Well, I was really inspired by the idea that Paul Allen saved the Seahawks because it wasn't easy. In fact, I was over at their headquarters today, and we were talking about the idea that the Seahawks for a few weeks were relocated down to Los Angeles. And this was an amazing thing. And if the Seahawks had left, the task would have been not to just build a new stadium, but reacquire a franchise. And so Paul Allen stepped up, and he told me once that he used to be able to go to Dick's and eat a hamburger, and nobody really knew him. And then he knew he had to become the face of a campaign to save this team in his hometown. And there's lots of things he could have done with his life, but he instead chose to save the team. And I always found incredible inspiration in that. And so when you match that against with then, the first number in the history of sports to be retired was the number 12 in honor of the Seahawk fans. It was so loud in the Kingdome that they penalized the home team, and that didn't go very well. It lasted one season. But that number was retired by Mike McCormick, and the place literally shook. And then it stopped shaking perhaps, but it's now shaking again. And in fact, it's so loud and it shakes so much that it actually registers on the Richter scale, which I just still find unbelievable.
That was that beast mode run, which was incredible. Unbelievable. All right, so now you become the COO of the National Football League at probably a very interesting time because technology, science, you name it, is going to really advance this sport. I mean, to a point now where you walk in the stadium, there's an app there to take you to different places. What do you see that's happening now, and what do you foresee in the future?
Well, it is a fascinating, time to be in this business because so much is changing. But there's also things that still remain the same. And so I think as much as we think about technology, broadcast, innovations, staying true to your fans and filling your buildings is still such a critical part of this business. And I know that, at the end of it is a game. And it's still the focus of and the players who play the game love doing it here. And when they pull that jersey on, they feel such pride. And I think that keeping these stadiums full and vibrant is such an important part of of the focus going forward. And lots of times people want to talk about technology, new ways of conveying the game, broadcasting the game, but Chuck Arnold's done a great job of keeping the stadium full year after year, and I still believe that that's a fundamental, huge part of this business.
What's the biggest challenge in being able to keep the fans going to the games as opposed to just watching it on your iPhone, watching it at home?
Well, they were recounting my career in sports, and when I started with the Golden State Warriors, this is a true story. Mark Shukin is here somewhere, but we were doing broadcasts with 3 cameras and 1 tape machine. And the guy actually that was doing it was kind of copying the home team feed. And we had this little small truck, and he was pulling feeds off the other. So 3 cameras, 1 tape machine, and today, an NFL broadcast out of this facility, there will be scores of cameras shooting every imaginable aspect of the event, including multiple angles of the play, which puts an enormous amount of pressure on our officials. And so technology has aided us in so many ways, but it's put a lot of pressure on a lot of people, including our officials. And with 3 cameras and 1 tape machine, the naked eye worked pretty good, but that's not so true anymore. And so technology has really aided that experience at home. We can watch games, we can see things from different angles, we can see replays that we would have never imagined in the day. But there's still nothing like being there live. And I think it's really important we preserve that live experience.
And I know there's new things this year, and there's going to be more things in the future that makes it so much special to be at games with things that you can see on your iPhone. What are some of those things, and how is that evolving?
Well, I think that when you look at, all of our buildings now have enough capacity to support the technology that fans expect. I think that, not too long ago, these buildings were bottlenecked from the ability for people to use technology at the stadium, and so that's been fixed, and this building is as well wired as any building in the world. And so people love it, but I think when you see a big play, you're not seeing people look down on their handheld. They're still watching the play. So technology supports all of that. We had 150 million people in the U.S. watch the Super Bowl, and we had tens of millions of people, tweeting about that amazing game. But they weren't tweeting really. It was interesting. We can see the pattern of tweets and when it happens, and it was people watching it largely still on big screens in their homes and reacting on social media, digital media, to what they're seeing on the big screen. And so, and I think the mobile devices are extending that experience. Somebody has to run out and get another 6-pack of Budweiser. They were able to continue to follow it on their handheld, but they're still watching it on the big screen. But technology is doing a lot to wrap that entire experience. And the sharing that went on in that Super Bowl of friends reaching out to friends saying, "Holy smokes, are you seeing this?" And I had some Falcons fans behind me writing friends at home saying, "I've never been so sad in my life." I mean, that was one of the most epic games I've ever seen.
I know one thing. I go back to Sloan in Boston occasionally for their convention, and one of the things I noticed that they had 2 years ago that's evolving is that they can now take the pictures of the plays on video, be able to now integrate them into things that you can analytically look and study things, whether it's the speed of the player, whether it's decreasing speed of the player, and analyzing where things are. How is that advancing?
Well, it's a significant issue in the player and health and safety piece. And, I'm so proud of what the commissioner's done in recent years to advance player health and safety. I don't think for us there's a more important issue. And I think that's something our fans expect. They love the game. They love the pace of the game. They love the physicality of the game, but they expect that we're going to be pioneers in player health and safety. And when we pioneer for others. We're seeing a lot of connection with the military and lots of joint learning. But that technology you've talked about of really understanding what happens at a point of contact is so critical to truly mastering player health and safety. And we're doing a lot with technology and with innovations, and we're going to do more. I think we're really picking up speed. And I think we can look our players in the eye today and say, in many ways, the game's never been safer. But we still feel like we're on the front end. We've just hired a chief medical officer and Dr. Alan Sills. We're working on sensors and other things that'll really understand points of contact, how hits happen, and it's a very exciting thing to be on the front end of it, and to have everyone pulling in the same direction.
Because I know some of the things that can happen, and you can look at a player, you can see his speed starting to go down during a game, and if you can recognize that, at least analytically, you can say, you know what, we need to alternate him a little bit more, take him out to keep him fresher. Those are the type of things they can look at.
Well, and coaches are so brilliant in breaking down plays and vulnerabilities, so, that on one end of the spectrum is player health and safety, and on the other end of the spectrum is the competitiveness of coaches, being able to analyze performance of players, where their energy is coming and peaking during a game, And it's truly extraordinary. And we're seeing a lot of that come out from here. I think that when we think about Seattle and all the pioneering that's always happened in this community, new football helmets are being developed here. Microsoft is our partner, and the Surface tablets and the way we're going to officiate games going forward. We're breaking trail with Amazon and the deal that was announced with Amazon, and all of that is happening here in Seattle. So Seattle is a truly amazing place in sports, not just renowned for its fans, but also renowned for a lot of the technology that's coming out of here on a whole wide variety of fronts.
Curiously, you may not know the exact number, but how many companies do you have roughly that are into IT, analytical studies, injury studies and all that? You may not have the precise number, but kind of give us a depth of how many hands are on that.
Well, it's, technology touches so many parts of our game. And so it's, how we deliver broadcasts, technology here in the stadium. So there's, thousands of companies, there's startups. And again, they're inspired by the game. They're seeing the game, saying, how can my idea impact this game? How can my idea impact player health and safety, or how people watch the game, or how people are ticketed for a game? My friend Mark Shukin's here, and he's working on a new ticketing idea. And so one cool thing about the NFL is that we see a lot of this stuff in its sort of early incubator stage. And it's really fun working there in that respect, because we get to see things early on and get to sort of think about what the world's going to look like in 2020 and 2025 and beyond. I will say this, that anyone who thinks they know exactly what's going to happen is not telling you the truth. Because it's very, very hard to tell in this rapidly changing world what this is all going to look like in 2025. Will people still watch games in a similar way? I believe they will. I think technology is going to complement a lot of these experiences, but I think people still want to be at the game. And I think no matter what technologies we come up with, augmented reality, virtual reality, still being here at the game and turning to a stranger and giving them a high five is going to be really hard to replicate in any form of technology.
This is kind of an interesting time, too, in a sense. It's a changing dynamic, and right now the measurements may not be there, because I never bought the idea that football ratings were down. They were different because more people might be watching on the phone or watching the Red Zone channel and all that. At what point is there going to be a gauge where the iPhone, all those things match up with the Nielsen ratings?
Well, we're really starting to study how people are watching games, and we're doing it in really, really interesting ways. We're actually going into people's homes and replicating the game experience and trying to watch everything from what their eyes are following to what their behavior is during commercial breaks. And it's, and that's a big change from putting meters in, a few homes in a million person marketplace. We believe that there's more people watching and following this than ever before, and we know that intuitively, and then the information's borne out. You're seeing it in all of these other technologies supporting broadcasts. But it's reinventing itself every single day, and it's really a fascinating place to work in that respect, because our content has never been stronger, and people are using it to really break trail on what the world's going to look like in the coming years. As
you would go to a Monday morning meeting in New York, and as a week progresses, how many people like this that are out here come and say, hey, I got this idea, and which ones kind of interest you and Roger Goodell?
Well, there's a lot, but I think that, I've been a big believer that a lot of the good ideas at the league do come from teams, and so I've worked at teams my whole life. We were talking with Chuck this morning about that's something I think I have helped bring to the league as an orientation, that a lot of the great inspirations, and, we're working on our 100th anniversary, and, we're talking about, what are the big ideas for your 100th anniversary, 2019, and this is going to be an epic moment for the league, and I think we're really intent on making sure the fans help us charter what that's exactly going to look like. And I think one of the things we did a good job of here, and the Seahawks and the Sounders and the Mariners and other teams, is listen to your fans. And if you listen to your fans, they're going to tell you what they want. They're going to help lead you in technology. They're going to help lead you in what you should be doing from a social responsibility. And staying close to your fans is really important, and it's a little harder at 345 Park Avenue. We're in New York City. There's certainly a lot of fans in New York City, but it's not like being here with a 68,000 person focus group. And I think teams, Mr. Allen, he's from here. This is his hometown. And when the team wasn't doing well, he was there hearing the crowd, seeing the crowd, reading the newspaper. And I love that part of sport, is owners that are deeply connected to their fan base and making the right decisions for the teams based on that.
Are there a couple examples of what fans have wanted that you've been able to deliver in the last couple of years?
At the NFL? Yeah, I think that, a lot of the technology that we're seeing, we have something called Next Gen Stats. I mean, fans really want to see things cut and sliced. We're also working on our entire game presentation and how we present the game and the broadcast. And we've recently announced that there are going to be less commercial pods. Fans actually like watching commercials sometimes, and they appreciate a break, but they don't want to see so many breaks. They want to see a pace of play. We thought that perhaps the game length, that notionally 3 hours and 5 minutes, 3 hours and 7 minutes might be long. Well, it's not. The fans are okay with that, but they want a pace of play that doesn't see us chopping things up. It's that commercial break after a PAT. And so you're going to see next year us really working hard to tighten up that game presentation and present the game with more of that pace in all aspects: commercials, promotional messages, and even officiating. And next year you're going to see us take a tablet out on the field, a Microsoft Surface tablet, and we're going to try and make that moment happen more quickly. We're not going to wait to come back from the commercial break to have the official deem a play good or not good. And so that's in part listening to fans. And when I was telling you about the kind of focus groups and studies we're doing now, we're really trying to understand this, because there's another generation coming behind this that is different. And I had a lot more in common with my father and how he did things than my son and daughter do and so we've got to be prepared and really be students and wise to this.
What do the focus groups and say about the millennials, who is as technologically as savvy as you can find, and what can the league do to make it better for them as a fan?
Well, we're already seeing connection like never before, and it's 365, 24/7. And we've just got to really understand what they want and how they want it. And I think part of us changing, for instance, the pacing of the game presentation is what we call it, is a direct result of those fans speaking. And it's not just the millennials. I mean, the millennials aren't the only ones with devices and go to the airport. And as I fly out today, you look around and everyone is doing things just a little bit different. But there is another generation of fans coming, and they are different. And they have been brought up in a different world that is moving at a very, very rapid pace. And great organizations are going to have the ability to move swiftly and make decisions. And I'm proud of that with the league. I think when you look at the rule changes we've made and things we've done, which are a direct result of our fans, people have asked me a lot about the fans, the player celebration piece. And, you can do focus groups, but you can intuitively tell that the players want a little more freedom there, and the fans love it when they do it. And so that's, that's research, but that's also understanding your fan base, and spending time in these stadiums really helped me do that.
In the last month, you reached a deal with Twitter that's going to have broadcasting, announcing, different type of shows. Talk about that, and where can that lead?
Well, Twitter's been a good partner, and they carried 10 games last year on the Thursday night package. Amazon's actually stepped into that. So Amazon Prime customers are going to have an interesting experience. And, it was really fun for us to talk to the Amazon guys. They're just amazing in what they do and how they do it. And you talk about breaking trail and changing the world. They're really thinking about the world in such abstract and different ways, but they're focused, as we think we are, on the user, the end user. What does the customer really want? What conveniences do they want in their life? And how can we take things that we've been taking for granted and do it better? And that same spirit, I think, resides at the NFL, where we don't take anything for granted. I work for a guy who's very driven And he doesn't take a day off. He's always saying, how can we make this better? And it's fun to be a part of an organization that feels that way. I think Paul Allen was that way. I think he was a guy that always said, how do we make it better? My friend Adrian Hanover's here, and I know something he'd like to make better, okay? They tied last night, but I came to the game and still marvel at the amazing crowd that was here last night. And the pioneering that he showed in creating one of the greatest franchises here. So a shout out to Adrian. I flew in yesterday. I'm flying out because I have to see my boss tomorrow, but I'm here in large part because Adrian asked me to be here. He's a great pal of mine.
Let's take a few minutes and take some questions, what you might want to ask.
Hi, Corey, who's in. As a former athlete who had the opportunity to play professionally but never really hit that level, that big level, I've seen a hole in organizations' motivation to prepare their athletes for becoming community leaders and business leaders after they're done. With all sports, I know that probably the NFL has the shortest life for athletes, but all sports have a very limited lifeline because we really put our bodies on the line. Do you think that the organization should maybe carry that burden at all to prepare those athletes who, I'm not talking about the Richard Shermans and their foundations, but the ones that play 3-4 years and then have to be business people after they're done?
What did you play?
I play professional basketball, but overseas.
Okay. Well, don't wave that off. That's an enormous commitment. And so the one thing that, being involved with team sports my whole life, if you said, what's been as enriching part of your life is being around incredibly dedicated athletes. And here, Sounders players who, Ozzy last night played his 300th game, and when he started, he defected from Cuba and he was making about $70,000. And today he's making a lot more than that, but his dedication was the same. It really wasn't about money. And so being around athletes has always been an incredible privilege, and the dedication. I think we do owe our players more in virtually all respects, but that's not just me. That's really I think, there's a lot we can do to help players prepare. But in fact, I think our players are uniquely prepared because when you compete at the level that they have and they do, the wisdom that comes from that is really quite extraordinary. And so one of the reasons I love being around players, not just because a guy scored a winning touchdown or blocked a field goal, but they compete at such a high level, and I think there's inherent wisdom that comes that can be applied to other aspects of life. And so I've always loved being in our locker room here, being around the players, and seeing the spirituality that exists in professional athletics. And I've seen it in the NHL and MLS and, the NFL and the NBA, and there's a total common denominator there that's really inspirational. At the end of the day, I'm a fan, so good on you for playing because many of us have lived vicariously through your great efforts.
Yes.
With the advancement of professional-grade wearables for athletes, there's an opportunity to use all of that data to enrich the entertainment experiences. Is the league looking into that in the near or midterm?
Yeah, I think when we think about player equipment, we think first and foremost about player health and safety. There's a lot of discussion about concussion. It's something we're paying a lot of attention to, but lower body injuries affect more of our players than some of the things that we talk about even more. So when we think about, and I think you're going to see changes to equipment. There's a helmet company here that is absolutely pioneering in helmets, and I think equipment is going to look different going forward, and it's something we're working on. The owners have made a real commitment. We have a dedicated leader and a guy named Jeff Miller who's leading not just player health and safety from a medical standpoint, but a whole engineering process and thinking about how we can re-engineer all parts of the game. And we're in the front end of it, but it's going to lead to amazing things. If there's some fan benefit that helps fans watch games in a more compelling way, I think that's an added benefit, but the primary goal is player health and safety.
Final one.
Good morning, Nelson Rainieri, work for an energy company. Thank you, GeekWire. Great event today. Thank you for your last comments before. I thought it was very, very insightful. Seems the NFL might be ahead of the other, leagues on dealing with public policy issues, either because they have to or because they want to. One item that I think I'd be curious how you all think about it has to do with something that we maybe only see at games, and that's a lot of different communities coming together. I think we're living in challenging times, and I wonder when it comes to bringing communities together with issues of, related to race, diversity, et cetera, where do you see the NFL kind of managing that? Any comments you have along those lines?
Well, that's an important issue, and sometimes those lines are hard to navigate. Where does that line begin and end? Where have you crossed the line? But I think one of the things that I have brought to the league office is working for teams and understanding truly what communities and players and how all that comes together. Some of the greatest moments of my life were here, and not necessarily in the stadium, but taking the game and having it impact community. I chaired the largest United Way campaign in the United States. King County has the largest United Way, and that's when I got to know the commissioner, because we climbed Mount Rainier together and raised money for the United Way. But that year, our campaign wasn't going very well. It was 2009. We were faced with a tough economy, and our goal was over $100 million. And I remember visiting with players and telling them about homelessness and how this campaign was going to. And the players went out and did over 50 appearances that weren't necessarily a part of their collective bargaining agreement. And when you see that, you understand why stadiums like this get built, because sports can truly unify countries. Super Bowl Sunday, everyone gathers, but every Sunday in all of these communities, great things happen as a result of that unifying force. And I'm a big believer in that. I think that's actually as important as the final score of the game.
Let's take one more.
Stunned them into silence. Isn't it awesome?
I guess the last one is...
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I'll turn the tables a little bit. The world's changing, and we were talking earlier about the changing world for you, but I'm of the opinion that ESPN continues to deliver lots of unbelievables, but you've kind of reinvented yourself, so you want to...
Yeah, because what happened about at the beginning of May, 100 of us were told, okay, we love you, but we don't need you to work for us, but we're going to pay you. So technically, I'm going to be a full-time ESPN employee from now until June 2020. The only thing I don't have to do is contribute. They can always call me back, but in the meantime, I do the show at 710 ESPN 6 days a week. I'm the main fill-in on Sirius on Moving the Chains, so I get a lot of work at Sirius. I am probably going to end up working with Jen Mueller, being on the opposing team's sidelines on the Seahawks broadcast. So I'll be doing that because I did sidelines last year, 4 games for ESPN Radio, and it was the most fun thing I've ever done. It was awesome. I mean, I'm literally 5 feet away from Russell Wilson when he's getting his knee checked out, listening to him utter a screaming swear word when they touched the right inside of the knee, and I mentally knew, ooh, he suffered a 3rd-degree MCL sprain. So I love that. So I am so fortunate, one, to have worked for ESPN for over 20 years, still continue to be with ESPN, love the company, love the people, they're treating me great, and so I get to reinvent to a certain degree, and then who knows what happens over the next 3 years.
And think about how technology has changed your career from being a guy grinding out the printed word to now you have all these various means in which you communicate to literally millions of fans. You were telling me earlier the numbers.
1.45 million followers.
Okay, so you ask about, there you go. I rest my case.
Hey, thank you, Todd. Great to see you.